Horatio. The candlelight flickered across the cramped dormitory at Wittenberg, casting dancing shadows on walls lined with books. Horatio sat hunched over his desk, his quill scratching methodically across parchment as he transcribed another passage from Seneca. Outside, the autumn wind howled through the narrow streets of the university town, but he barely noticed. Philosophy had become his refuge, his fortress against a world that had shown him little kindness. He was not born to this life of learning. His father had been a minor functionary in the Danish court, a man whose modest position had granted young Horatio glimpses of privilege without ever truly belonging to it. He remembered standing in the corridors of Elsinore as a boy, watching Prince Hamlet and Laertes play with wooden swords while he waited for his father to finish his duties. They had never noticed him then, just another servant's son, practically invisible. Everything changed when fever took his father during Horatio's 14th year. Without patronage or prospects, he should have descended into poverty. But Prince Hamlet, now a young man preparing for his own studies at Wittenberg, had remembered the quiet boy from the corridors. "You read, don't you?" Hamlet had asked him one day, finding Horatio in the castle library. "I've seen you with books." That simple observation had altered Horatio's destiny. Hamlet had convinced King Hamlet to sponsor the orphaned youth's education. "Every prince needs honest friends," the old king had said, his beard already graying. "And honest friends are forged in shared struggle, not shared privilege." Now, 3 years into his studies, Horatio understood what the old king had meant. At Wittenberg, away from the hierarchies of court, he and Hamlet had become true companions. While other students formed alliances based on family names and future inheritances, Horatio and the prince had bonded over late-night debates about fate and free will, justice and mercy, the nature of the soul. Yet Horatio never forgot his place. He was here by grace, not by right. While Hamlet could afford to be idealistic, to question authority and tradition, Horatio knew that his survival depended on clear sight and careful judgment. He learned to observe, to listen, to weigh evidence before speaking. Philosophy taught him to think, but life had taught him to be prudent. A knock at his door interrupted his work. "Horatio! Stop hiding in your books and join us at the tavern." It was Rosencrantz, one of Hamlet's other companions, his voice already thick with wine. "I have an examination tomorrow," Horatio called back, though this was only partly true. The real reason was simpler: he could not afford the tavern as often as the others. His stipend covered tuition, lodging, and books, but little else. While Hamlet generously paid for their outings together, Horatio's pride would not allow him to always be the recipient of charity. "Hamlet insists." Rosencrantz persisted. "He says you've been avoiding us." Horatio sighed and set down his quill. Hamlet's friendship was the most precious thing in his life, he would not risk it through antisocial behavior. He pulled on his worn cloak and joined the others. The tavern was crowded and warm, thick with the smell of ale and roasted meat. Hamlet waved him over to a corner table where Guildenstern was already engaged in an animated discussion about the new astronomical theories. "Horatio! Tell them I'm right," Hamlet said, grinning. "If Copernicus is correct and the Earth moves around the Sun, doesn't that prove that our senses deceive us? And if our senses deceive us about something so fundamental, how can we trust them about anything?" It was a trap, Horatio recognized immediately, not a malicious one, but a philosophical snare nonetheless. If he agreed with Hamlet, he'd be drawn into hours of abstract debate. If he disagreed, he'd have to argue against the prince he owed everything to. Instead, he chose a middle path, the skill he'd honed through years of observation. "Perhaps it proves something different, my lord. Perhaps it shows that human understanding can transcend the limitations of our immediate perception. We can be deceived by our senses yet still arrive at truth through reason and evidence." Hamlet's eyes lit up with delight. "Yes. Exactly. This is why I need you, Horatio. You see clearly, without prejudice. Rosencrantz here agrees with whatever I say, and Guildenstern contradicts everything on principle, but you seek truth for its own sake. The conversation flowed on, fueled by wine and youthful enthusiasm. But Horatio noticed something that night, something that would stay with him through all the years to come. While others spoke to hear themselves, to win arguments or gain favor, Hamlet spoke to understand. The prince genuinely wanted to know what was true, what was right, even when it cost him comfort or certainty. As the evening grew late and others stumbled off to bed, Hamlet and Horatio walked back through the quiet streets together. "Do you ever regret it?" Hamlet asked suddenly. "Coming here, I mean. You could have found a position at court, earned a steady income. Instead, you're here studying philosophy, which qualifies you for approximately nothing." Horatio smiled in the darkness. "Every day, my lord. And every day I conclude I made the right choice." "Don't call me my lord when we're alone," Hamlet said, not for the first time. "We're friends, Horatio." "True friends." "Friends," Horatio agreed. But even as he said it, he understood what Hamlet, in his privileged innocence, could not, that their friendship, however genuine, existed within structures of power and debt that could never be entirely erased. Horatio would always owe Hamlet his education, his escape from poverty, his very identity as a scholar. And that was why, he realized, he would always be the one to speak truth to his friend. Not because he was naturally honest, though he tried to be, but because he understood the weight of obligation. Hamlet had given him everything. The only thing he could give in return was honesty, clarity, and unwavering loyalty. The wind picked up as they reached the dormitories. Winter was coming, and with it, the end of term. Soon they would return to Denmark, to Elsinore, to the complicated world of court politics that Horatio understood all too well. "Promise me something," Hamlet said at the door. "Whatever happens in our lives, whatever paths we take, promise you'll always tell me the truth. Even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." Horatio looked at his friend, this prince who somehow needed a nobody like him, and felt the weight of that request settle on his shoulders like a sacred charge. "I promise," he said simply. "Always." He could not have known then what that promise would cost, or that it would be tested by ghosts and madness, murder and tragedy. But even if he had known, Horatio thought later, he would have made the same vow. Some debts could only be repaid in truth.